And tonight on the Daily Wrap, the first Democratic debate went down in Vegas last night. We'll cover who won, who lost, and everything in between. A new poll finds Ben Carson and Donald Trump now virtually tied for the GOP nomination. And is there a refugee crisis heading our way? This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, joined by my co-host Rick Unger. Worked overtime last night.
It was fun. It was fun. You know, getting to host debate coverage is always great because otherwise you're home yelling at the people who do it and throwing your shoe at them when you think they're crazy. So this way other people got to throw their shoes at me.
Interesting, the shoe thing. Isn't it a Muslim thing, like critical. The ultimate insult when you throw a shoe at somebody?
It's most viewers who watch cable news, you know. They like to get angry.
Fascinating. What surprised you most?
You know, what surprised me most is something you're going to talk about today, which was the size of the audience, which way exceeded what I had expected. You came much, much closer.
I did, didn't I?
In your estimates. I was very surprised by that.
Closest to the pin, but not even close, and we'll share with you at home what that audience number was. Quite remarkable, actually. And to Mr. Ratings Right, he is a former FBI special agent, a former Navy SEAL, and currently the president of Continued Services. Jonathan Gilliam, Sans Props, is back. And finally, he's a contributor to the Conservative Review. Tom Borelli joins us after a long goodbye, but it's good to have you back once again. Let's get right to the Daily Download.
I'm very proud that over my almost 30 years of public service, I have had no scandals. I've always been honest, I have the courage to take the long-term view, and I've shown good judgment. I have high ethical standards.
And that was Lincoln Ducey, brother Steve Ducey of Fox and Friends. Actually, no, but boy, the resemblance is amazing, isn't it?
I actually thought it was Howdy Doody grew up to be a politician. Who knows?
Yeah. Anyway, currently polling at 0.0%, kicking off the first primary debate for the Democratic nomination. So, in addition to the popularity challenge Chafee, the debate featured Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley, former Virginia Senator Jim Webb, Senator Bernie Sanders, and of course former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who, in case you were wondering, is an effective progressive.
Do you change your political identity based on who you're talking to?
No, I think that like most people that I know, I have a range of views, but they are rooted in my values and my experience. And I don't take a backseat to anyone when it comes to progressive experience and progressive commitment.
Just for the record, are you a progressive or are you a moderate?
I'm a progressive. But I'm a progressive who likes to get things done.
Don't even know what that means. But according to our first guest, Senator Bernie Sanders was the big winner of the night, not Hillary Clinton.
Secretary Clinton, is Bernie Sanders tough enough on guns?
No, not at all. I think that we have to look at the fact that we lose 90 people a day from gun violence. This has gone on too long, and it's time the entire country stood up against the NRA.
As a senator from a rural state, what I can tell Secretary Clinton, that all the shouting in the world is not going to do what I would hope all of us want, and that is keep guns out of the hands of people who should not have those guns and end this horrible violence that we are seeing.
Okay, let's bring in Newsmax political analyst Dick Morris, who joined Mr. Unger and Steve Malzberg last night during the post-debate coverage right here on Newsmax. Dix, you were impressed with Senator Sanders last night. Seems like the establishment media gave the victory to Hillary Clinton, but most online polls, and millennials control those, so you're with the youngins on this one, seem to think that by an overwhelming majority, Bernie Sanders, they agreed with you, won last night.
Well, and also Frank Luntz's focus group unanimously agreed that Sanders won it. They were half Hillary, half Sanders, and by the end of the evening, they were 3/4 Sanders, 1/4 Hillary, and even the Hillary voters felt that Sanders did better. I'm confident that in the next few days, my prophecy of last night will be affirmed, and that you'll see Sanders decisively closing the gap with Hillary in the head-to-head polling. And I think that this creates a new reality. The insiders, the pundits, don't know the right and they don't know the left. They know the establishment center, but nothing outside of that. And this is a candidacy, Sanders, as with Trump's, that's fueled by those outside the mainstream.
Which is interesting because Sanders has been in the Senate for so long, but like Cruz, as you said, he does come across as an outsider. Were you surprised just how weak the other three candidates on stage were, how ineffective, how almost unprepared they seemed to be, particularly Chafee and Webb just seemed lost for the entire evening?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised. I did look at it and say, oh, that's why Sanders is the real challenger, not any of them. I hadn't quite appreciated that till I actually see them underwhelm.
Dick, it's Rick. Picking up on something you said last night that I thought was interesting. You pointed out that you thought the power brokers in the Democratic Party, after watching the debate, would be in fear of the fact that now you have a candidate that can actually topple Hillary Clinton, that being Bernie Sanders. I disagreed with you at that time. I got on the phone today with a number of those people who I know and ran it by them. I wanted to see if there was something to it. A number of them agreed that they thought that Sanders probably had gotten the best of the debate, but absolutely none of them thought that it would have any kind of a real impact on pushing his chances forward to get the nomination. So they don't seem to have that fear you thought they would. What do you think today?
It's wonderful to hear the conventional wisdom because you know how bad it is, and it makes you look good. Obviously, Sanders did well, and obviously that's going to affect the debate polling. And when they get a poll back that shows that Hillary is not ahead by the 45 to 27 she was going in, but is ahead, if by anything, by 5 or 6 or 8 points, they're going to freak. And they're going to realize that Sanders has tremendous momentum. Momentum from voters they don't care about and don't know about. And I think that what's going to happen, as I said last night, is that there'll be a panic that will be focused on getting Biden to run. Now, right now, the insiders all believe Hillary won, which is ludicrous. And once they learn how wrong they are from the poll, they'll change their view.
Well, Dick, you know, the only polling I've been able to see was the pulse polling that was going on last night during the debate, which, as you know, picks up people who, as they're watching it. In that particular pulse poll, Hillary was actually picking up more than Sanders, but not by much. I don't want to suggest it was a massive thing, but it would tend to say that it's probably going to remain somewhat static going forward. But you might be right.
Yeah, I think the focus group is a much case of that. And also bear in mind that Hillary went into this with a 2-to-1 or 3-to-2 lead. So anything approaching parity is going to narrow this race.
Yeah, okay. And as we heard from you, Dick, after the first two GOP debates, where you said Donald Trump had won those, even when many people, including myself, had Carly Fiorina winning the second debate, and she did get a bump. Everybody said this is the end for Trump, and all we keep seeing are his poll numbers. He's still on top, even though Ben Carson is gaining.
Interesting how Fiorina is faded. She was before the debate. She was at 4%. The day after the debate, the poll had her at 15. Yeah. Now she's back to 6. And I think it's because the media did a job on her in explaining how vulnerable she would be from her record at Hewlett-Packard and how she wasn't really conservative, that she'd endorsed amnesty for immigration and a whole variety of other things. So I think that, again, this is very sensitive to the blogosphere. You have to realize that the pundits, the establishment, the mainstream folks that you see on, I don't know, stations like CNN and Fox News are not in touch with either the Tea Party or the Occupy Wall Street 1%ers. And those are the folks that are driving the votes in their respective political parties.
One more question for you, Dick. We only have about 20 seconds, but it's a pretty quick answer that you'll be able to provide. Does Joe Biden see what happened last night and jump into this race as a result?
Yeah, I think he'll get into the race. I think that probably the punditry has to wear off, and he has to actually see polling numbers. When a poll comes out that shows Sanders closing on Hillary, there's going to be an explosion you're going to hear all over the country.
And that will be quite entertaining to watch, no question about it. Dick Morris, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Okay, so who do you think won last night's Democratic debate? Go to newsmaxpolls.com and cast your vote. And coming up next, Jeb Bush is finally ahead of Donald Trump, but he might not be happy about it. We'll explain.
But tonight, I want to talk not about my emails, but about what the American people want from the next president
Senator
of the United
Sanders.
States.
That the American people are sick and tired of hearing about your damn emails.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that was probably the most interesting exchange of the evening. Wouldn't you guys agree? What do you think? Did Bernie help himself or hurt himself in giving Hillary a pass on the emails, Joe?
He showed he didn't want to win this race, in my opinion. He could have just kept his mouth shut, but to go in there and give her a lifeline, it reminded me of Chris Christie giving President Obama a big hug at the Jersey Shore right before Sandy. He could have invited the president to the obviously the Jersey Shore to survey the damage, but the hug was over the top, just like Bernie was over the top there. He didn't have to lecture anybody on that. We don't want to hear about the damn emails anymore.
Well, Jonathan, didn't it also show that Bernie Sanders is a straight-up guy and just spoke his mind?
No, I think what it showed is that he's incompetent, too incompetent to be president of the United States, because if he thinks that this is a little thing and it's just her damn emails, then he doesn't need to be president of the United States, because he's going to be in charge of our foreign policy and national security, and she injured our national security.
Tom, you go with the flow on this?
I go with both of them.
Yeah?
First of
Okay.
all, he certainly didn't want to win, because he had the opportunity from the national stage really to get at the ethics. He had her on the flip-flopping, but he could win at the character issue. Character matters, and it should matters in the president, and the rule of law also matters. So she got a complete pass, and I was really surprised.
Didn't make
you're
any
all-
sense.
You're all wrong.
Shocking.
You're all
I'm
wrong.
shocked. I'm
he
shocked.
wanted, the point he was making was, let's talk issues. Let's stop with the emails already. But there are going to be a lot of people
But
out there who
character
don't
is an
think you're
issue.
wrong.
The
A
FBI.
lot of people want.
FBI
The
still thinks it's an
FBI
issue.
could be among them.
Right,
Fair
right.
enough. Well, you know, the nation is still abuzz over last night's Democratic debate, but there is still news being made on the Republican side of the political equation. In fact, some got made today. A new Fox News poll shows that Jeb Bush is finally ahead of Donald Trump.
Wow.
But maybe not the way Governor Bush would have hoped for. According to the Fox poll, 22% of likely Republican voters now say they will never vote for the former Florida governor. Donald Trump, who had previously had a sky-high 59% in that less than ideal category going back to June, has dramatically improved those numbers to just 18%. So, 22% taking the survey say they will never vote for Jeb Bush, while only 18% say they couldn't bring themselves to vote for Donald Trump. Not exactly thrilling news for the Bush campaign. Now, guys, we've asked this question before, but you know, we're going to keep asking it until the fat lady sings or Jeb Bush drops out of the race. What can Jeb do, if anything, Tom, to bring back his numbers and to turn this thing around?
I don't think so. I think when you have negatives like that, it's really going to be really, really hard to do that. And we heard Dick Morris refer to that the establishment class really doesn't understand what's going on in the electorate. And when you're talking about the Republican grassroots activists, establishment is out. We've seen that with who's leading the polls in the Republican field.
But you know, Jonathan, establishment is out until it comes time for the establishment to decide, look, this is all fun and games, but we need a candidate who can actually beat the Democrats. And those are the people who have money. And you know where most of those people live, strangely enough? In blue states. The Republicans with all the money are in California and in New York. At some point, don't they sit down and say, hey, this may be all fun, but we're going to get beat if we don't elect a candidate like Jeb Bush, who they give the money to?
I think what you're saying is very interesting, because I agree with what you're saying about him being unpopular amongst the, I guess, the normal people. Right. Now, this ruling class that is in the Republican Party, it's going to come down to whether or not they have the power to persuade with their money.
I think that's a very fair point. Is this the year where the outsiders overcome the norm, Joe, or do we go back to the way it always is?
We've seen it with Herman Cain. We saw it with obviously
We're
Michelle Bachmann.
We're about at that time in the cycle where those people show up.
Yeah, but I don't see it happening, because while Trump may be falling back just a touch, the person that's pursuing him now is Ben Carson, another outsider.
Well, it may be happening because that same Fox News poll also shows that Dr. Ben Carson and the Trump are now virtually tied for the GOP GOP nomination. According to that poll, just 3 percentage points, a number within the margin of error, now separate the billionaire business mogul from the former neurosurgeon. With Donald Trump sitting at 26% and Ben Carson at 23%, what does this tell us about the state of the GOP race? Which one of you wants it? This one's up for grabs, guys.
Let me say this one thing real quick. Maybe it's just me, but I don't trust that poll because it's with Fox and they hate Trump. So, you know, I just think...
And you actually brought a CNN poll that showed a different number.
Yeah,
is that
CNN,
today?
yeah, CNN ORC says that Trump is at 38% and that Carson is at 22%.
How recent is the poll?
He just posted, Trump
today.
just posted that today.
So but we don't know when it came out, though.
As the media guy here, so you're accusing a major news outlet of altering a poll because they don't like somebody. Look,
well,
there are a lot of people at home that agree with you right now.
It doesn't have to be altering. It can be the way you ask the questions.
Or who you ask.
That's how you can skew a poll.
Yeah, I get it with certain polls, but here it's who will you vote for?
Yeah, but then if it was rigged, you expect Fiorina to be up like it was the last time. Yeah. I think you've seen movement, which kind of reflects kind of the mood of the country.
Well, what about what we were just talking about a second ago versus the power group versus your basic person? Who did they ask these questions of? Was it the power group? Of course Trump's going to
Yeah, but Trump's negatives came down, though. Dramatically. It went from 59 down to 18.
In the short time we have left, one word answer. Joe, do either of these candidates get the nomination, Carson or...
Trump, I believe.
You think Trump will?
All bets are off. Anything's possible.
Well, I say neither, then put the nomination.
I'm good off the hook there, by the way.
All right, we want you to share your thoughts on the latest Fox News poll by going to newsmaxtv.com/comments. Coming up, a very interesting story. Is a refugee crisis coming to America? You don't want to miss it.
And welcome back to the show. I want you to take a look at this. This comes from the Center for Security Policy. They released a video that has many wondering if there is a refugee crisis heading our way here in the U.S. Take a look.
It's been over 7 years since a church group from another state brought a couple hundred refugees to the rural county where I live. I wanted to know, how could they do this? What was the governmental process that allowed the resettlement of refugees to a county ill-prepared to assimilate them? Employment opportunities were scarce. The health department was not familiar with illnesses and mental health problems of people who came from parts of the third world. The school system was not prepared to teach large numbers of students who didn't speak English, and subsidized housing was scarce. I wanted to know who gave permission for what amounted to a dropping off of needy people in our county seat. So I began my research and posted everything I learned to a blog, Refugee Resettlement Watch, so that others might know what I learned about a federal program that is 35 years old this year. In summary, I discovered that the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees was choosing most of our refugees. It's under the influence of a powerful Muslim supremacist group called the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Not surprisingly, a large number of U.S.-bound refugees are coming from countries with large numbers of people who hate us, including Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq, and soon from Syria, just to name a few. The U.S. State Department then distributes the refugees to 9 major federal contractors, 6 of which are so-called religious charities, but all are largely funded from the U.S. Treasury. They're not passing the plate on Sundays for the $1 billion price tag for the resettlement. And that figure does not include the extensive welfare benefits refugees receive. The refugees are then sent to over 190 cities and towns in the U.S. where the 9 major contractors support 350 subcontractors. The refugees receive help from the subcontractor for up to 6 months, and the subcontractor then submits paperwork to admit the relatives of the first group. As the years have passed, I've become increasingly alarmed by the percentage of problematic Muslim refugees admitted and distributed around the U.S. through this program. By the way, the Refugee Resettlement Program is not the only one used for legally admitting Muslims, but it is one of the most important. Many are forming cities within cities. Perhaps you know one where you live, where mosques are being built to consolidate, train, and promote a growing American Muslim population and its Islamic supremacist doctrine called Sharia. This process of Muslim colonization is called the Hijra. Muhammad told his followers to migrate and spread Islam in order to dominate all the lands of the world. He said they were obliged to do so, and that's exactly what they are doing now with the help and support of the UN, the U.S. State Department, and the Christian and Jewish groups assigned to seed them throughout the country. Your tax dollars pay for it all. I've written this little book, Refugee Resettlement and the Hijra to America, so that you will know what is happening to us and what we can do about it. We only need to look to a troubled Europe to see the path ahead for America if we can't stop this migration and stop it soon. There's no reason on earth that we should have brought over 100,000 Somalis and another 100,000 Iraqi Muslims to America. Soon we will be resettling Syrian Muslims in large numbers. The UN at the moment has over 10,000 in a pipeline destined for our towns. The FBI told Congress recently that they cannot be properly screened. If you don't help counter the Hijra, we are, in my opinion, doomed. Over time, this migration will be more devastating to your children and grandchildren and to our country than any terrorist attack could ever be. Learn more at Refugee Resettlement Watch and SecureFreedom.org.
All right, Jonathan, you watch a video like that. Obviously, there's a refugee problem currently exploding over in Europe right now. Germany taking on hundreds of thousands, Hungary, countries like that, closing their borders basically, not letting them in. If you were running the U.S., would you allow this to happen, and does it pose a security risk that we should be concerned with?
You know, I look at this a lot like I looked at the Patriot Act. There are probably good parts of this, and then there's probably parts that are absolutely terrible. But you have to look at the overall program. And I think, you know, if you take racism, all these things that people are accusing her of, I think if you look at the program and you try to figure out what works and what doesn't, and you look at what she did, I think she put together a good argument. I think you can find some real problems there.
Okay, well, we're going to talk more about this after the break, but first we're going to discuss this, but watch this. Are you one of the millions of Americans whose thyroid gland isn't functioning the way it's supposed to? Well, now there's hope to change all that. Actilin is a premium nutritional supplement designed to support optimal thyroid function. Actilin is a comprehensive supplement designed to help support adrenal health, thyroid function, energy, and your immune system. Learn how you can get a 30-day trial bottle of Actilin with our special offer. You can pay $4.95 for shipping and handling on your initial bottle with enrollment in our Smart Ship program. Sign up today to get a risk-free trial of Actilin by visiting actilintrial.com or calling 1-866-439-3343. You'll be glad you did.
And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. Unless you're now just joining us, you have seen the video going viral on social media where Ann McCorcoran, or Refugee Resettlement Watch, expresses her belief that a United Nations resettlement program, along with the United States, is pushing increasingly large numbers of Muslims into America, and that such a program imperils the future of the nation. Now, in a piece Ms. Corcoran wrote for Frank Gaffney's Center for Security Policy, Corcoran relies on a Pew study which pointed out that of the approximately 1 million refugees admitted to the U.S. each year, just 10% of those people are Muslims. Do these numbers justify so large a concern, particularly given that Corcoran expresses no concern about the arrival of the remaining 90% who were not Muslims? Tom, what do you think about that?
Well, I think the video raises important questions, and any time I hear the United Nations mentioned, my antenna goes up. I think what she's asking really for is transparency, and what is the process? How many Americans even know there's such a resettlement process wherever they're coming from? Because we live in a land of limited resources.
Let me ask you this, but transparency on whose behalf? As far as I know, she didn't allege that anybody's trying to hide it. It's just,
no, but,
you know,
but transparency in terms of people should know. We all live in communities, and we would like to know who's going to be parachuted into our community, regardless for what country, regardless of what religion, because it's going to be a drain on...
I'll take your point on that. I can't. And because you said regardless of what any country, and I think that's not unreasonable. But Jonathan, she is not having a problem with the other 90%, or she's expressing no problem, and I read everything she wrote. She's only expressing a problem with this 10%. That strikes me as wrong somehow.
So, you know, Rick, we cannot ignore the fact that wherever a Muslim immigration movement has happened in that country, there have been some issues. Anytime a Western country takes in Muslim immigrants from Syria, Iraq, any of these areas over there, there begins to have some types of issues. One of the reasons is because Islam cannot exist in another culture that is not Islamic.
But yet it does. There are many Muslims in America who
that
were born
here.
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm talking about is when you take the refugees out and you bring them into this country, they are not from a non-Islamic country. And I think what we're seeing here, where people are confusing racism, you're seeing a woman who has identified something that she is concerned about. And I think there's a lot of people that have this concern.
Your point raises something that I'm always thinking about. We sitting here at this table would probably all agree that the United States, the lifestyle, the way America is, we all think it's the best on the planet. I know I do, and I think all of you do, right?
I do.
So
it's our culture.
So why would we not have the courage and the belief in our country to say, you know what, you may come from a country where things are very different, but when you get here and you see how we do it in America, you're not going to be able to help but to want to join that culture.
Because that's not going to happen with
but if they stay
Islam.
isolated, I guess would be which they have, I guess, in Europe and
Dearborn,
other
Michigan
places.
is a good example, right?
Well, but except that I know Dearborn very well. I have friends from there. I lived near there for years.
You hate Michigan.
I hate Michigan,
football
University
team.
of Michigan.
Okay,
but I lived there.
You hate Michigan.
And you know what? They're not isolated in Dearborn. They really aren't. One of my best friends in law school was a Muslim girl from Dearborn.
Rick, if that was true, then Dearborn in that area wouldn't be the largest population of Muslims outside of the Middle East.
Yeah, but they're not isolated.
So therefore, they are isolating themselves to Dearborn.
They don't not leave Dearborn. You know, it's just
Yeah,
like you
but
have Jewish communities in most cities too that tend to stay together. Do you consider the Jewish community isolated?
No, but it's assimilation.
Somewhat.
I think is the big question.
But
Will they assimilate into the culture?
But will they assimilate?
That's the question.
Well, here's what I think I was trying to say earlier is that people that come from an Islamic country that are fundamentalists, and a lot of these people that are coming from these war zones are fundamentalists. They do not have the ability to go into a free country and assimilate. They expect the country to assimilate to them, and that's a problem.
I would accept that there's some number that are. I don't know that you can just say a lot, but I want to get to this point because I think it's important. In that same article, Corcoran, again citing data from Pew Research, reveals that by the year 2030, only 2 countries outside those that are traditionally Muslim-populated nations will have fewer Muslims than the United States of America. Those 2 countries would be Malta and Poland. Indeed, as the chart reveals, only 0.5% of the world's Muslims will find their way to the Americas. That includes North America, Central America, and South America by the year 20. If these projections are anywhere near correct, why are we so freaked out about it when so few of those people are coming here? Just very quickly, Tom.
Well, because this is something new, and we need to understand more.
Understanding more I like,
and
but
also
barring them out I don't like.
The reproduction rate amongst immigrants that are Muslim, that's a problem.
Fear of the unknown.
No, fear of the unknown is my favorite answer. What do you think about this alleged refugee crisis? We know you're going to have something to say. Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments to say it. Let us know what you think. Coming up next, it's that time. We're going to read some of your viewer comments.
And welcome back to the show. Let's read some of your viewer comments. First up, we have some thoughts about last night's debate. Madeline says, progressive debate, boring old white guys, no thanks. Better things to do. Better not watch this show then. Trump's tweets will be far more exciting.
I think it's interesting she thought that Hillary was a boring old white guy. David says, when I heard that my life as a white person doesn't matter. You didn't hear that, David. I turned the damn debate off. I cannot believe that sucking up to black people just to get their votes is so prevalent in the Democratic Party. Is that actually new to you? I hope all of the other white people heard their comments. It is stupid. I hope all white people, as well as other people of color, vote these people out of any political party.
I did find it interesting that Hillary A wasn't asked, do you believe that Black Lives Matter or all lives matter? I gave Anderson Cooper an A for his performance last night as moderator. I thought he was excellent, but she didn't get that question. I would have loved to have heard her response, but the debates were kind of interesting, right? Do Black Lives Matter or do all lives matter? What's more of a threat, ISIS or global warming? What do you subscribe to, socialism or capitalism? If you told me that going in, I'd say, this is crazy. This isn't our country.
They did ask that question, do all lives matter or do Black Lives matter?
They did, but I think they asked
Not
it
to
of
Hillary.
one person and
No,
other
to
people.
Bernie, but
other people.
Bernie and O'Malley.
Hillary.
What kind of question is that? That's, you know.
Well, no, but
I'll tell you why they did it.
I know why they did it, but
and
still.
you have to put it into context. I mean, listen, I understand why you're asking that, but the whole do Black Lives Matter versus do all lives matter has taken on a different context. I understand that most people disagree with that, and I don't blame you. I'm not criticizing for it. But it does mean something different than what it appears to mean on the surface.
Yeah, that wasn't a Cooper question. That was from Facebook.
Yeah.
But they asked Bernie because he was basically overrun at an event by Black Lives Matter where he acquiesced the stage.
Right.
And then O'Malley said that no, all lives matter, and then later apologized and said, no, I didn't mean it. So that's why he went after those two.
But what did he say on there last night? He said, Black Lives Matter. He didn't say all lives matter. And that to me is just, that's so, look, you're the CEO of this country.
Un-American.
You know how
as
somebody,
the president, you're the CEO
you know
of the
how somebody
country.
explained it to me? It's like going to a cancer survivors event and you had a heart attack. And complaining that, well, why aren't you people talking about heart attacks? They kill people too. To which they would say, because this is a cancer event. Doesn't mean that heart attacks don't matter. They do, but that's kind of how it was explained.
That's a lot of spin for something that, and no pun intended, is black and white. All lives matter.
But that's what it means. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that's what they mean.
And cancer chooses its opponent. Most of the people have been shot by cops, didn't obey the cops, and they got shot.
I understand.
All right, let's move on. Rick may need a chiropractor by now. Anyway, Jason says, when Bernie got into his Golden Sachs anecdote, which he tells with much verve and animation, I saw Hillary shoot him a look that was as close to a human emotion as HRC can demonstrably emote. The look said, quote, I think I can use you. It was not admiration. It was avarice. Is that a word? Avarice? I've never seen that word before. And I did pretty well in the SATs and vocabulary. Anyway, it was at that moment when Hillary realized Sanders is the missing piece of her House jigsaw puzzle. I guess is the implication there that Sanders will be a VP choice for her? Because I doubt that.
I honestly don't know what the comment is trying to say.
What was that A word? What did that mean?
Avarice?
Yeah.
The desire for a lot of money.
Really? I've never heard you ever heard that word before, be honest.
I'm from Arkansas. Of course, I've never heard that word.
Good.
No,
Tommy?
I'm a scientist.
All right, see?
By training.
Folks, I'm getting very
He's the
concerned.
lawyer.
I'm very concerned with who I'm sitting with
exactly.
here. But hey,
That's what you should be.
Very Noah Rothman of that.
where's Noah Rothman when I need him? Exactly. All right. Last night we asked you about the war going on between DNC Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Vice President Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. Lois says, can't stand Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She needs to go far, far away. That's kind of what we said last night.
Yeah, we all agree.
Yeah.
But I don't think she's going anywhere.
I don't either. Not until we have a new president.
Oh, and then you think.
Then it changes.
Oh, okay. Well, one more thing to root for 2017 for. Finally tonight, we have a comment about Playboy's announcement that they are going to stop including nude photos in their magazines. Scott says Hugh Hefner has a magazine that, at first, shocked many folks of photographs of half-nude girls, not half, and sort of dirty jokes. And now the world is filled with such pornographic swill, it makes Hugh Hefner's magazine look more like Jack and Jill. As I said last night, Rick,
right.
It's art, baby.
Yeah, it's art. You got it right, commenter. I'm with you on this.
I think so, and you know Hefner. You played golf with him last
No,
weekend.
remember you said we were roommates in
At
college. You
Ohio
had it
State.
right. No,
Sophomore year.
I don't think Hefner went to Ohio State. I have to be honest.
Be honest with me.
Yes.
Did you ever go to the Playboy Mansion? You lived in California.
I have been there many times.
Have you really?
Oh, lucky man.
Can we blow through the commercial? Tell me all about it. Do they really have the pool and the caves and all that
It's
stuff?
a very nice place.
Really?
And I lived around
Rick
the
is
corner
smiling.
from it.
I've never seen
It
you
was
beam
in
like
my
this
neighborhood.
before.
It was
right
in
as
my
right
neighborhood.
there.
Let me ask you this. Your advice from a CEO's perspective, you've been a CEO. Do you think that this is just the most ignorant decision you've ever seen in business?
No, I think they're right. It's irrelevant.
That's what, they had a
Who needs
monopoly,
it?
they lost it.
I don't know. I think your brand is your brand is your brand is your brand. Anyway, if you want to weigh in on any of the issues we discuss here on the show, be sure to send us your comments. Yay or nay is coming up right after the break. Hi there. The show is almost out of runway, but we still have 5.5 good minutes left to explore the most important issues of the day via the nightly.
We'll see
Yay or nay? Okay, first up, Republican presidential candidate Marco Rubio, not a big fan of Tuesday's Democratic debate, telling Fox and Friends this morning that the candidate's ideas were outdated and stale, much like that tuna and toast I wolfed down during commercial.
You watched that debate last night. It looked like something from the early 80s. It was basically a liberal versus liberal debate about who was going to give away the most free stuff. Everything. Their answer to every problem in America is a government program and a tax increase. That's all they prescribe time and time again.
Okay, so is the path to voters' hearts and minds a toll-free road? Will giving away free stuff like college education work? Let's ask the liberal here. Is this the path to victory, Rick Unger?
Well, actually, I mean, saying it could be a path to victory. I have to say on this one, I'm with Hillary. I don't think you can pay for it if you give it away for free. It's a nice idea. I will say this, though. Yeah. Bernie Sanders made a point that I hadn't thought about, and I thought it was interesting. He said college today is really the same as high school, going back 50 years ago. And 50 years ago, we made the decision everybody should get a high school education. So from that point of view, I took his point that everybody should get a college education. How we pay for that, if we do it for free, I'm not so sure.
Free stuff, the path to victory, John?
You know what's interesting is Bernie last night, Hillary tells Bernie that he doesn't know anything about the gun control, that what he's saying doesn't work, and he's sitting here telling her that there's no way that, you know, that the college stuff, or was it the other way? Anyway, regardless.
Sounds like a debate.
Regardless, what it was everybody up there telling each other that their plan, there's no way they could get it passed, no way it could get it paid for, which makes you wonder about all these things that they're talking about.
Because the Republicans are so different.
Well, they don't push the social programs quite as much.
No, they do the same exact thing with kill Obamacare. It'll be better.
Before you answer, I'm going to share a number with you. All right. So, the audience last night was 15.3 million. All right. People at CNN were telling me that it would only be about 8 million. The record on cable in the history of Democratic debates was only 8.3 million. So basically doubled that. Right. In that number was almost 5 million young people watching, or the young demos, so to speak. Okay, so they hear this, and it resonates with them, and they're not thinking about how do you pay for it. They're just thinking, good, my debt goes away, I don't have to worry about it. So does it work?
And that's
well, it may work with that demographic because they would be looking for it, but the real issue is the independents, and where are the independents going to reside? And $19 trillion in debt, I think the adults in the country need to stand up and start to vote with intelligence rather than emotion.
Okay, well, next up, Donald Trump is what we like to call in the biz a prolific tweeter. And going into last night's debate, there was lots of hype around just how brutally candid the GOP frontrunner would be when offering up live analysis of said debate on said Twitter. But you gotta admit, these tweets showed that maybe the Donald really was on the verge of sleep when sending out these, I should say, to his millions of followers. Let's put a couple up on there. First, the debate last night proved that Hillary is running against the B team. She won't be so lucky when it comes to me. Okay, I like that. Let's go to the next one. Sorry, there is no star, in caps, nice touch, on the stage tonight. Obvious. Next. Can anyone imagine Chafee as president? No way. Thank you, Captain Obvious. And finally, O'Malley, as former mayor of Baltimore, has very little chance.
That was stunning remark.
So were you disappointed in Trump's tweets?
That was the great tragedy and disappointment of the evening. It was like Trump didn't show up.
He didn't show up.
What was that about?
Nothing to work with, maybe.
I mean, listen, he was right about all those things. Watching O'Malley was like watching Ted Cruz try to act like he's Southern.
I could have tweeted that.
It's usually more biting, though, Tom.
You don't drink while you tweet. That's one of the rules.
And Trump doesn't tweet. He doesn't drink, by the way.
That's true. That's a good point.
Finally,
take that back.
Staying with the Trump theme, as we often do, here's a question for you. Our audience, to you, before we pose it to the panel. Does Donald Trump deserve Secret Service protection? He is a leading candidate, and there is a $100 million bounty on his head, courtesy of escaped Mexican kingpin El Chapo, not to be confused with El Guapo. Trump claims the Secret Service isn't offering protection because he's a Republican. Does he deserve Secret Service protection given his popularity, Rick Unger?
The rules are it has nothing to do with popularity. The only person who has it is Hillary because she's an ex-First Lady.
Jonathan. I think they should start looking into it.
Tom?
He's got his own money. He can protect himself.
No, all right. That's the best answer of the night. And that's our show for this evening. On behalf of my co-hosts, Rick Unger, Jonathan Gillum, and Tom Borelli, thank you for watching tonight. The Steve Malzberg Show. That's straight ahead.